Right, welcome back everybody. So today we are talking about pulse rifles, specifically highlighting the Darkest Before that you see right in front of you, but we're also going to be talking about pulse rifles in general moving into the final shape. So the reason being is that if you're out of the loop, pulse rifles are getting an enormous buff in the final shape, with most of them receiving in total a 38% buff versus red bar enemies. This is because they are receiving two separate buffs, the first of which is a 20% buff to every single enemy type, which includes miners, mages, mini-bosses, and bosses. And the second is a 15% buff on top of that, which is just to red bars. So if you add those two together, you get around 38%, which is just for the red bars, which is honestly pretty huge. So in a twist that many people never saw coming, pulse rifles are going to be the next meta primary weapons. And today I'm going to prove it to you. This is why we are going to be talking about Darkest Before today. However, before we talk specifically about Darkest Before, I want to quickly highlight why this buff is so impactful. So I took one of each pulse rifle frame, these being high impact, adaptive, lightweight, aggressive burst, and rapid fire frames, and tested their DPS versus the Templar. I also got the numbers for other popular weapon frames from other weapon types like the 140 RPM precision frame hand cannon, 900 RPM lightweight frame SMGs, and 720 RPM rapid fire auto rifles. Okay, so firstly, these are the numbers currently, and you can clearly see that the 900 RPM SMGs are the clear winners for raw damage dealing power, with auto rifles and the 140 hand cannon close behind, with most of the pulses at the bottom. However, if I now apply the 20% buff to bosses because Templar is a boss, you can see that the SMGs are still king, but pulses fly above the rest. What this means is that in the final shape, pulse rifles will be strongly competing against other weapon types for basic red bar ad clear. And don't forget, that is with me adding the 20% buff, not the 15 as well, because obviously Templar is a boss, so he's not going to get that extra 15% buff. So it's going to be doing even more damage to red bars. Also, slightly unrelated, but I also did a test with my newly crafted rewind rounds Outbreak just to see how much more damage it got compared to the other video I did earlier last week, and you guys can see the results of that now. Jesus, the amount of not reloading you have to do. I didn't reload at all! That's insane!
Not reload.
Imagine.
Oh.
36993. I think that was higher than before. So yeah, pretty impressive. Let me know if you want me to make a separate video on Outbreak entirely, but yeah, now back to Darkest Before. So this begs the question, why should you grind for a Darkest Before then? Well, if we just take a look at the numbers, it's clear that rapid fire frames have the most DPS out of all of the pulse rifle frames. So that's one reason, because Darkest Before is a rapid fire frame. But secondly, for the same reason Luna's Howl is getting a lot of hype right now, Darkest Before is a solar weapon, and it also gets the coveted combo of Clip Incandescent or Subsistence Incandescent. Incandescent is already an S tier ad clear perk, but because the damage from the Scorch Ticks can be buffed by weapon perks, it serves to assume the 38% buff will also affect the Scorch Ticks as well, making them some of the strongest Scorch Ticks in the primary ecosystem. But I could be wrong on this though. Additionally, Scorch and Ignition kills caused by incandescent weapons will trigger Subsistence if that perk is also present on the weapon, meaning that if you're able to chain multiple kills and proc several ignitions, you essentially never have to reload. Take a look at this clip. Actually here, we should be getting right up to full. We might even be able to trigger an ignition. There we go, yeah, and it fully reloads it. In my opinion though, Heal Clip is the real star of the show, because not only does it grant you cure ×2 upon reloading after a kill, it also grants cure ×1 to any nearby allies in a 15-meter radius. With the upcoming buffs, this weapon is now going to become an incredibly strong source of team utility and AoE ad clear. Not to mention, it synergizes very nicely with things like Ember of Benevolence to basically provide constant 100% uptime because you're curing your allies over and over. Ember of Ashes will also increase the amount of Scorch applied, leading to even more ignitions. Finally, on top of all that, it was recently announced that the Reprise Prophecy weapons will be enhanceable in the final shape, meaning this weapon will only get stronger because Enhanced Incandescent lets you apply even more Scorch stacks with Ember of Ashes. The thing is though, the only downside to rapid fire pulses is that generally the reload and handling stats are quite low, but this can be remedied if you manage to get Flared Magwell, plus the intrinsic property of rapid fire frames grants you a 0.8x reload animation scaler if you run the mag empty, encouraging you to deplete the whole magazine, which does help with the feel. I don't even have Flared Magwell on mine, and with one solar loader plus the intrinsic, it feels perfectly fine, so don't worry about that. Also, the crossing over origin trait helps with the handling, and it's never not nice to have a little bit of extra damage for the bottom half of the magazine. Also, on the topic of perks, I also highly recommend running Backup Mag, because in the final shape, with the removal of mods like Major Spec and Minor Spec, Boss Spec, Taken Spec, there really isn't any other clear winner mods other than Backup Mag to run, because with the removal of the damage increases, you might as well just have a bigger magazine. You could use stat boosting perks if you wanted, But for me personally, I think backup mag is the clear winner, so I would highly recommend considering this mod going into the final shape. So yeah, I highly recommend farming one of these pulses this week. You have 4 days left to do it, and fret not, the farm is super easy. All you need is 3 Celestial Nighthawk Hunters, 1 Galahorn, and 2 Rockets, and the boss should die in no time. And I'm sure you could use GLs or any other strategy as well. The 1 phase is pretty much guaranteed because it's an old dungeon. If you're not looking to farm this role, you can craft the Adhortative Pulse Rifle from this season, also with Heal Clip Incandescent. However, Adhortative is an adaptive frame, so it has slightly less damage overall, and for me personally, I don't really like the feel of adaptives, but you know, it's up to you if you don't want to farm Prophecy. Just to show you how easy it is, I'm going to leave you with a full run of one of our farming clears from earlier today. It is literally less than 2 minutes.
Dog.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh.
The darkness landed on me.
I use the pulse. I will get it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that was such a sick Nighthawk. Oh, I got my nade on him too. It's perfect. Juice! So yeah, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Your support means the world. And if you're really into the content I create, consider becoming a member of the channel, which not only lets you support me in the best way possible, it also nets you a whole host of awesome perks along with it. A massive shout out to these members up on screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.